Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Haqiqatjou, where we discuss religion and politics, the two least controversial subjects. I'm your host, Daniel Haqiqatjou, and tonight we have a great episode for you talking about a very important topic of artificial intelligence, AI. This is something that has been in the news a lot lately. Pretty much daily, there are new developments regarding AI. And then later in the show, we're going to talk more about Zionism. We're going to actually look at the history of Zionism, specifically how it has affected Christianity, Islam, and atheism, where we have even Christian Zionists. How do we have this phenomenon of so many American Christians who support Zionism and the state of Israel, and they do this as a religious duty? We're going to talk about that history. A lot of Muslims have heard about the Scofield Bible. Non-Muslims as well now are more aware of the Scofield Bible and how there is editorializing of the Bible to make it more in line with Zionism. We're going to look more closely at that. We're also going to look at some of the biggest pastors that have spread Christian Zionism and who has been funding them. And inshallah, in the second part of that series, we won't get to it tonight, but in coming episodes, we're going to talk about Islamic Zionism and the effort to make Muslims into Zionists in the same way that many Christians have been turned into Zionists. And then we'll also look at atheistic Zionism as well. So that's going to be in the second part of another episode, but tonight we're going to focus on the history of Christian Zionism. But first, let's take a look at AI. So what is AI? Artificial intelligence, the ability for a computer to do tasks that are commonly associated with intelligent beings, human beings. So early AI was mostly associated with doing complicated mathematical calculations or playing chess. If you were younger, you might have remembered trying to play chess against a computer or against, even on your smartphone maybe. At a certain point, AI was able to even beat human beings, the best grandmasters at chess. And that turning point happened maybe 10 or so years ago. So now AI is able to even beat human beings at chess. Nowadays, a lot of AI is being developed primarily through OpenAI. This is a company that has been dominating the news with its innovations in artificial intelligence. And the thing about AI that we have to always keep in mind is that the ability for computers to process things like how to play chess, or maybe even diagnose diseases, or find hidden patterns in statistical data, or scan video footage and maybe scan CCTV footage for evidence of crimes, translations, all of these tasks associated with AI, they can actually be inputted into a robot, and that can allow for this kind of cybernetic technology where a robot is acting or behaving in accordance with artificial intelligence. So this is something that is rapidly being developed, and there's a great deal of money that has been put into this. OpenAI, this company that we're going to talk about, they are already valued at $80 billion. And to give you a sense of scale for that, Microsoft in the 90s was valued close to 80 to 100 billion. And at that point, Microsoft had already been, developing Windows and was pretty much dominating the personal computer market. And it was at 100 billion valuation. Now, OpenAI already is at that kind of $80 billion valuation. So that tells you that this is just the beginning of the road, and a lot of capital is being put into these AI technologies. So recently, the news has covered a new version of ChatGPT, which has been released by OpenAI. What is ChatGPT? I'll explain that in a second. There's also been this issue of social media algorithms and how artificial intelligence affects social media, specifically with TikTok, and how the US government has banned TikTok. Legislation has gone through to ban TikTok. And finally, the big news item relevant to the Israel-Palestine war has been the use of AI within military technology by Israel to target Palestinians. So that's also been a part of the news, and we're going to talk about that. So all of these news items cover or touch on the immense power of AI technology to control human society. And I don't think many people realize the significance of AI, because this is a major leap in the type of technology that humanity has. It's a leap that is maybe comparable to the steam engine, or maybe comparable to digital computers. That's the kind of leap that we're talking about, and it will cause a revolution in technology. And people often think about advances in technology in a consumerist way. What kind of new products will I be able to buy? What new softwares will I be able to utilize? But we should also think about technology in the sense of how it's going to be used to control human beings, and how to entrench power, how to keep the elites and the powerful in power for longer, and keep those who are out of power, and perhaps even oppressed, persecuted longer. That's what we should really be thinking about as well whenever there are these new innovations. And the thing about AI is that we're at this kind of turning point, or tipping point, you could say, where the elites have reached a stage where it's do or die, basically. If you look at recent history, maybe for the past 5 years, or you can go even longer, maybe the past 10 or 12 years, there has been many different protest movements, coups, revolutions happening throughout the world. The world is getting increasingly unstable. It is becoming more and more difficult for governments to keep their populations in check. Their old means of keeping people in check have failed, or are less effective, and governments are having to resort to more brutal means to stifle these kinds of revolutions. Plus, technology, including social media, have allowed more people to see corruption, more people to have accurate information about governments. There's less reliance by the population on state-controlled media, because you have the internet and you have social media. This creates a very volatile situation throughout the world. And governments have been actively looking for ways to control people and to stifle their ability to protest. The Arab Spring was a very good example of how social media contributed to this kind of violent uprising, at first peaceful, but then later violent uprising throughout the Middle East, for example. So governments are very interested in how do we prevent this from happening ever again. And artificial intelligence provides that type of technology. So if we have a problem and we're seeing a lot of corruption happening in the world around us today, then there is a chance that through the use of this technology, that corruption by these elite powers will become entrenched, because the technology that's being developed is going to become so powerful that there's going to be no opportunity for people to resist oppression and to fight back against oppression. So this is the tipping point, and it's something that we have to recognize how sensitive of a time, how unique of a time, pivotal time that we live in this current moment. And this is why we have to follow these technological developments so closely, and how governments are utilizing them. So just a reminder that I will be reading your super chats. I will be reading your super chats, inshallah, later in the stream. So even if you submit a super chat right now, I will inshallah get to it as long as it's appropriate. I will read it and address any questions. And really, I get hundreds of questions every week and requests. So the best way to get my attention really is through super chats. So on YouTube, just feel free to submit that and I'll get to it, inshallah. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to MuslimSkeptic, the channel. Subscribe to the channel. Also, subscribe to our newsletter, because that's the way that we can stay in touch with you if we're ever banned off of social media. Subscribe to our newsletter. There's a link to the newsletter subscription in the description box. Okay, so there are a number of ways that artificial intelligence can be used to control societies. I will discuss three main strategies that governments are using and planning to use regarding AI. So the first strategy, AI can be used to influence public opinion by creating these giant armies of fake online persons or avatars that interact with real human beings while expressing support for the views of the ruling elite and expressing harsh criticism for contrary views. Okay, so this is like a fake army, fake masses of people, bots basically, that look like real people. They talk like real people. They have the photos even. Photos can also be artificially generated. So they seem like they're real people. They have a LinkedIn profile. They have a Twitter profile or Facebook, whatever, Instagram. They seem like they're real people. They even have a history, a posting history. So they're not very obviously bots, but they're completely artificially generated. And the technology now exists for this, as I'll describe. The second strategy that governments are taking is that AI can be used to continuously surveil populations, keep tabs on people, and continuously administer punishments, either benefits or punishments to individuals depending on how much in line they are with the elite status quo, the elite controlled status quo. So this is basically like social credit systems, and AI is significant for this. The third strategy that governments are using and will continue to develop is that AI can be used to surveil all our communications. So all communication that's happening on social media can be monitored and manipulated by artificial intelligence to boost things that are in favor of government narratives, elite power, and deboost or censor or basically penalize content that is contrary to elite messaging. So these are the three strategies that I'm going to discuss now for you in a little bit more detail, inshallah. And I'll also share some articles on the share screen as well, so you have some visual stimulation as well. It's not just me talking, because I know some people on the first episode were saying, oh, Daniel, give us some visual aids. So that's what we do here on Haqiqatjou. We listen to your demands, and we'll have some visual aids for you as we go through the presentation, inshallah. But hopefully you're all sticking with me so far. Let's talk about this ChatGPT. So ChatGPT, it's the most famous AI in the world right now. It stands for Chat Generative Pre-trained Transformer. That's what GBT stands for. And this is a language-based model chatbot. It's a chatbot. Chatbots have existed for a long time, but they've been pretty primitive. I don't know if any of you used AOL Instant Messenger maybe in the 90s. I'm kind of dating myself. In the 90s or early 2000s, you had this AIM bot, chatbot, and it was pretty primitive. You could tell that it's a bot, but now ChatGPT has, or the OpenAI ChatGPT, you can't really distinguish whether this is a human or it is artificial. And people are using this technology to write college essays. ChatGPT is being used to write essays, to analyze legal documents, to analyze even medical diagnoses. You can ask it questions about certain kinds of diseases or illnesses or operations even. So it can provide simple responses, but it's continuously being refined and getting better. It can also, now with the most recent release, it can also be reactive to human emotions. So this is the newest version that OpenAI announced. They said that this new version will be able to determine what kind of emotion a person has, what kind of feelings they have, and then respond appropriately. And this is very significant for social media because you can, it's just a more human type of interaction if the bot is able to identify what kind of feelings you have. Are you mad? Are you sad? Etc. So the more advanced that ChatGPT gets, the better it's going to be at imitating human beings. And eventually, if not now, then in the very near future, humans will not be able to determine which accounts on social media are real people or they're actually bots. And this is very relevant to the first strategy that I was talking about. AI can be used to influence public opinion by creating these giant armies, basically, of bots that act like human beings. And that's the thing about human nature. Human beings are often the conclusions that we come to about what is real, like what is the real world around us, what is true, what is false, what is good, what is bad. We are heavily influenced by what we perceive to be people, the opinion or the thoughts or the beliefs of the masses. So if we think that the masses have a certain view about any topic, if some people, if, for example, imagine you hear from a relative that, oh, did you know that it's been discovered that mint, the herb mint, is actually a very dangerous herb and humans shouldn't be eating it? And at first you think, well, that seems not very credible. One uncle said it and he's just, a crazy uncle, conspiracy theory. He thinks mint is bad for you. That's ridiculous. But then you hear it from someone else. And then you think, well, that's strange, but maybe they just read the same conspiracy forum. But then you hear it, on the news. You hear it, you go to social media, you sign in onto X or YouTube or Facebook, and there are videos about it. There are tweets about it. Yeah, new findings about mint. And then you start believing it. You start believing that just because you've gotten these different points of contact and they've all told you the same thing. And without doing your own research, without even opening up a single article, not even considering maybe you've been eating mint your whole life and you never felt any kind of negative effect on your health. You'll disregard all of that history you've had and that experience you've had because now you have all of these different points of reference telling you the same thing, and so you start believing it, and that's now part of your worldview. Your entire worldview has changed, at least regarding this one herb, mint, because of maybe 3 or 4 points of reference. Because twice could be a coincidence, but 3 times, that's a pattern. 4 times, that's reality. So so you can see how you can change the reality of tens of millions of people by flooding the internet with these avatars. And what makes it so powerful is that if you don't understand AI, you think that these are independent voices. They're independent people. Oh, look, this is one independent commentator, another independent commentator. Oh, this person is actually located in my city. Oh, this person on LinkedIn is actually, at a company that I used to work at. This person was at the university I was at. I mean, not in reality, these are all made up and all their entire history has been made up, but they're all saying things as if they're real people. Then suddenly your entire worldview has changed because of some opinion that they have shared regarding climate, regarding the elections, regarding the state of the economy, regarding, the war, what's happening in Gaza, what's happening in Palestine. These things, this becomes a very powerful means of social control. And it's all done through these avatars. So there's this is already happening, by the way. So this is not even something that is, that's very new. Let me share the screen to show you this article. This is from The Guardian. The hacking and disinformation team meddling in elections. Team Jorge unit exposed by undercover investigation. Group sells hacking services and access to vast army of fake social media profiles. Evidence unit behind disinformation campaigns across the world, and the mastermind Tal Hanan claims covert involvement in 33 presidential elections. So the significant thing about this is that there are several significant things, but it's fake profiles, an army of fake profiles. And a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this would have to be done manually. You either can do it in an automatic fashion, but then have these bots that aren't very convincing. They're not very personalized, but you can gain a mass of these bots. Or you take a more personalized approach. So you have, an individual, or you have volunteers maybe who will go and create profiles online, and they'll add pictures and they'll add posts and they'll add that history. That's a very time intensive process for a person, an individual, to go and do that, in a sweatshop somewhere overseas. That's still very time intensive. It's cheap, but it also has some limitations, because the people who are making those profiles, they might not know certain nuances of the language. They might not know, what kind of pictures to add or how to create this lifelike profile. But AI takes all of that and makes it so much simpler. The AI can make very convincing avatars, very convincing profiles, add very convincing pictures, and do it en masse, so that you have thousands, even millions of these fake profiles, and they're all tweeting and posting and interacting and writing comments, writing replies at the same time. So it becomes this kind of swarm of bots, and they're being controlled. They can't be controlled by an actual person. They have to be controlled by an artificial mind. So this is something that, the primitive version has been happening. There's no reason to think why, once the technology is at that level with artificial intelligence, there won't be more groups taking advantage of this. And most likely what will happen is that governments will make sure, especially the governments that are controlling the social media companies, meaning the United States, controlling big tech, they will make sure that they're the only game in town, basically. They don't want these outside countries, for example, outside groups, to be able to have these massive bot armies. Obviously, they realize the power of it. They will have also means to control, so that they're the only game in town. The bot armies are at the disposal of the elite. So how is this relevant for Muslims? It's very relevant, because we know the power of people who pose as Muslims, or they pose as people sympathetic to Islam, and they turn out to be agents, or they turn out to have certain agendas, but they're able to influence Muslims towards those agendas. There was an example recently of a non-Muslim who was doing a lot of touring in MSAs and ISOCs, was doing tours at Islamic conferences, Muslim conferences. This guy named Craig Considine, he's a professor, but he had this one lecture, or this one idea that praising the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and saying, I think that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the first anti-racist. He just had some positive things to say about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a lot of Muslims just went crazy, about Craig Considine, and he was invited to all of these places. And now if you go on his social media, you see that he is talking about how, there's no genocide happening in Palestine, and, this war is a just war, and all this anti-Palestinian nonsense. So he kind of revealed himself. But the point is, he was this kind of agent, pushing a certain kind of line, and he was accepted by the Muslim community. He was put on a platform, on a pedestal, and he has these very bizarre and anti-Islamic views. And he's also very pro-Qadiani, for example. So imagine, if you have one person like Craig Considine, with artificial intelligence, you can create 1,000, 1,000,000 Craig Considines. You can create, so many of these types of people and unleash them onto the Muslim community. And you could even take things to the level where you have an entire fake ummah. You have an entire counter ummah, basically, of all of these profiles, all of these avatars. And it's women with hijabs, Muslim men with beards, wearing thobes, even videos that you can create of them going to Hajj, going to Umrah, reading Quran, like, oh, look at, this beautiful little girl wearing hijab. Oh, she memorized the whole Quran by age 5, and she thinks that women need to become, high-powered CEOs. Right? Imagine how powerful that will be in affecting how many Muslims. Or, oh, look at that, cute imam, or that very good-looking imam, and he has the most beautiful recitation of the Quran. And he thinks that, Muslims need to be more accepting of trans Muslims, for example, or LGBT Muslims. And that goes viral on social media. Think about it. They can hone their approach and create entire people living purely, digitally, artificially, but they look real and they sound real. You can have an entire madrasa of graduates. They're not real. They're not real. They're just avatars, but you can't tell the difference. You can't tell the difference. And the message that they have is, listen to Joe Biden, listen and obey. And yeah, Islam is great. Islam is such a beautiful religion, but, some of the, it's time to reform certain practices, and it's time to accept, the liberal secular democracy, and we have to change Muslim society. Islam is beautiful, but we just have to change everything. So that is in the pipeline. This is in the pipeline. So given the liberal West's current dominance in the field of AI, we can predict that this counter ummah will come, and they'll push this embrace of liberal human rights, feminism, LGBT, drug decriminalization, feminist empowerment, etc., etc., etc. This is what's coming down the line. And we have an article that we wrote on MuslimSkeptic. You can go read it. Dajjalic AI threat, beware the counter ummah. So this is on MuslimSkeptic.com if you want to go and read that as well with more examples and details. So you can also see how certain countries like China, that's already oppressing Muslims and persecuting Muslims, they'll jump on this type of technology. India as well, to control their Muslim population. So as this fake counter ummah grows in size and gets bigger and bigger, the real ummah will appear smaller, more insignificant. The views, real Muslim views, real Islamic views will be seen as marginal, extremist. They'll be seen as radical, because people won't have so much of people's lives, and Muslims included, their lives are online. They're interacting with people online. Their entire world is online. So if that world is being controlled and it's being made to seem like it's authentic, then we're going to be more at the mercy of these artificial technologies. This is very alarming and very threatening. So this is the first strategy, using AI to control people, to control specifically Muslim populations, but you can see how it can be used to control any given population or community. The second strategy, moving right along, is surveillance. Continuous surveillance, and then punish people if they step out of line. So AI can look at online behavior, what websites you visit, what you post on social media, who you follow on social media. It can also follow offline behavior. So where you shop, where you travel, how you spend money, what you wear. That can be monitored as well, because if you go out on the streets, there are cameras that are everywhere, and that footage can be analyzed. Some of that footage is controlled by the government. So AI can automatically classify people as being dangerous based on all of this data. If it's just a human being, or even a team of human beings is not going to be able to parse all of that data and come to any kind of accurate conclusion. And algorithms are also, it's very difficult for conventional algorithms to be able to process all of that information. You have to get algorithms that reach that level of artificial intelligence to be able to bring all multivariate factors together and also be dynamic such that it evolves over time. And that's the technological power of artificial intelligence. So, in some of these countries, let's say China, okay, this person is, growing out his beard. We see that he has a prayer app on his phone. We see that when it's Ramadan, he's not buying any food from restaurants or drinks during the daytime. Okay, then we're going to consider this person to be more extreme. He's on the more extreme side of the spectrum. So then you can limit that person's travel. You can maybe delete their passport. You can give them other kinds of demerits in the social credit system. And so this is something that is already happening in China, and leaked documents have revealed that this is how Muslims in China are being monitored and are at the mercy of this social credit system. So this is how AI is actually being weaponized against Muslims, not only in China, but just in general in the global war on terror that's been going on the past 2 decades. It's mass surveillance of Muslims paired with AI, and it's justified as being necessary for counter-terrorism. So electronic data is being collected, email, cell phone calls, social media posts, internet browsing history, any kind of apps, prayer apps, Quran apps, the kind of donations that you make. Where do you make your donations? Where are you traveling? Also biometric data, facial recognition, fingerprints, voice prints, DNA can be collected, has been collected in many cases. Transportation, even when you go out and you take your phone, that phone can track you in terms of your geolocation at any given time. Like, are you going to the store? Are you going to the hospital? Are you going to the mall? All of this data is being collected, and it was justified on a counterterrorism basis targeting Muslims. But then, of course, we know that the U.S. government, because of what we learned in the Snowden leaks, it's been expanded to every segment of society, every U.S. citizen. And the motto of the NSA, the security apparatus, the security agency of the United States, is collect it all. Every communication, every piece of data, collect everything. This is called data mining, and this was revealed in the Snowden leaks back 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago. And, what's funny is that there was no real public response in terms of telling the government, hey, you're violating our privacy, you're violating our constitutional rights by tracking our communications. You're wiretapping all of our communications and our internet search history, et cetera, et cetera. This is a complete violation of our privacy. There wasn't that kind of response other than a handful of isolated cases. So this has continued, even though it's very patently illegal, and it can only be justified on the basis of counterterrorism. But, it's monitoring everyone at the same time. But the problem is, when you have all of this data, how do you find the needle in the haystack? How do you find the real troublemakers, the people who are a real problem for the state? And this was the problem that the U.S. government and other governments have faced. And that's where artificial intelligence comes in, because artificial intelligence can parse all of that data and automatically flag, using statistical indicators, any type of radicalism, quote unquote, extremism, quote unquote, future terrorism, quote unquote. And then the AI can punish those individuals, suspend the passport, as I mentioned, maybe close the bank accounts, or even more extreme things like strike them, with a drone strike. Why not? That kind of level, you can always justify, oh, well, this was a terrorist, he was planning to do some dastardly terrorism, so we had to take him out. That all that precedent has been set by the executive branch of the government in the United States, and other governments have even less of a hesitation, like China, to implement these types of Orwellian technologies against the population. So this is all relevant to a very recent story on the use of Israel's use of AI in this war against Palestine. And there's three technologies that have been reported on recently. One is called Lavender. You may have heard this AI technology. The Gospel is another technology. They have these kind of ironic names. And then Where is Daddy? So these technologies have been reported on. You can go to 972 Mag. I'll share the article. A mass assassination factory inside Israel's calculated bombing of Gaza, permissive airstrikes on non-military targets, and the use of an artificial intelligence system have enabled the Israeli army to carry out its deadliest war on Gaza. So it's using this specific technology, this artificial intelligence technology called the Gospel. And it's basically looking at the pattern of motion of people in Gaza, and based on that, finding power targets or power buildings where the statistical model predicts that that's a location that's more likely to be used for military activity, so it becomes a target for bombing. The problem is that it's not the most accurate thing, and the thing about statistical models is that there's a lot of glossing, there's a lot of smoothing out the curves, basically. And so a lot of civilians end up dying, or collateral damage, as it's called. So this is part of the reason why they claim that the death toll, civilian death toll, is so high in Palestine. It's because of the use of these AI technologies, and the technology is also programmed in a very callous, inhumane, genocidal way. You also have Lavender, the AI machine directing Israel's bombing spree in Gaza. The Israeli military has marked tens of thousands of Gazans as suspects for assassination using an AI targeting system with little human oversight and a permissive policy for casualties. So this is another technology that it identifies militants. Okay, how is it doing this? There's all kinds of surveillance, camera surveillance, looking at every inch of Gaza. Okay, this is significant because when they have this type of camera satellite technology that's monitoring every inch of that part of the world, you have to question why certain camera footage or video footage doesn't exist for the atrocities that Israel claims occurred on October 7th. That's a separate discussion. But yeah, the cameras are there, pointed 24/7, taking granular detail of faces, Palestinians in that area of the world, and especially in like such a contested region on the border of the Gazan border with the rest of the occupied territory. Why doesn't video footage exist of these so-called mass sexual assaults that took place, etc.? Let's put that for another episode of the Haqiqat show. But back to Lavender. So there's a tracking of Palestinians, identifying the militants. Okay, how do they do that? And then the bombing is done when that target goes home. So he goes home to his family. And that's when the strike happens in order to maximize casualties. Kill the target and his whole family and anyone else who's in that building. So this has been going on using AI. Some have speculated that maybe this is all a ruse, that Israel isn't using technology. They're trying to just have a scapegoat. Just blame it on the AI, so all of those murders are not on your record when this case goes in The Hague, and you're not prosecuted for war crimes. There's no general that you can prosecute, because technically those deaths were not because he pressed the button. It was a program that pressed the button. So this is Lavender, targeting apartment buildings, infrastructure, and other public areas. want to show you something else. So it's also important to note that lavender is not just being used for Palestinians. Israeli companies are trying to use the same type of artificial intelligence for targeting quote unquote radicals, specifically Muslim radicals around the world. So this was reported. Israeli AI company aims to find online extremists before they kill. Our technology analyzes a vast amount of digital footprints to identify signs of potential risks. And the company is called Real Eye. So they're using this type of technology. It's not just for the Palestinians. This type of technology is going to be targeting me and you. This is what they are reporting on. So how effective it is, what is really going to come out of this. They're developing the technology so they can sell it for hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. And you know that there are governments around the world who are going to be paying top dollar to get their hands on this kind of technology, specifically for cracking down on Muslims. So now let's talk about the third strategy. We talked about surveillance. We talked about the counter ummah. The third strategy is to continuously surveil our communications and to manipulate online communication, social media, by boosting or deboosting. So you've heard of this distinction between freedom of speech and freedom of reach. Freedom of speech, the idea claimed that, you can say anything that you want. You know, you want to insult people, you want to say something racist, you want to be anti-Semitic, you have the freedom to say as much as you want. But the freedom of reach is off the table. You cannot just assume that your voice will be projected through technology, through social media, to reach as many people as possible. No, we reserve the right to limit your reach. So you can say what you want, but don't expect anyone to hear what you're saying. So Elon Musk, with his takeover of Twitter, has made this distinction and said that this is his policy, basically. Yeah, I give people the freedom to say whatever they want on the platform. Not true, by the way. But I reserve the right, our algorithm reserves the right to deboost content that is deemed hateful or is misinformation or is conspiracy theory. We can limit the reach. So what this means is that you have the elites, again, controlling the algorithm, and whatever is in their favor, they will boost, and whatever is not in their favor or contrary to their interests, they will deboost it. So if you have a YouTube video and the content is contrary to the status quo, the elite's interests, then it will get fewer views, fewer shares, fewer likes, and the content overall will just be seen by fewer people. This is the algorithm. The algorithm is controlling that. And if it's content that is deemed very positively by the elite ruling class, then that's going to be boosted. That's going to be promoted in this kind of algorithmic way. So social media companies already have been operating like this. You know, the thing about artificial intelligence is it's that it's going to take that level of control of social media even further to the next level. And what we've seen is that the social media companies have been very much wary, scared, terrified even of this kind of anti-Israel narrative, any kind of anti-Israeli lobby narrative, any kind of posts along those lines has been deboosted for many years now. If you've been on social media, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is not something new, but the problem came with TikTok. The problem came with TikTok and also with Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter, because for TikTok, the algorithm was more neutral. The algorithm didn't have this type of pro-Israel bias, and this was a problem. This became a big problem, and you had lawmakers in the US say this outright. You know, even though it might be denied by others. Here's Mitt Romney. Lawmakers admit they want to ban TikTok over pro-Palestinian content. As a potential ban looms over the platform, some are admitting that they hope the app's demise will help kill pro-Palestinian sentiments online. So Mitt Romney, this is not like some Joe Schmo. This is one of the major politicians of the Republican Party in the U.S., and this is reported in the Rolling Stone magazine. So this is something very significant to just openly admit that, yeah, this is a problem. We want to kill pro-Palestinian sentiment. We want to kill it, so we have to ban TikTok. There's also pressure on Elon Musk, big pressure to get Twitter to tweak its algorithm and make it more biased in favor of pro-Israel narratives. And it seems like Musk relented. There are boycotts aimed at Twitter, and millions of dollars in advertiser money. And then Elon Musk met with a lot of Jewish leaders. He met with Ben Shapiro. He went and visited Auschwitz. And then shortly thereafter, it seemed like there was a shift or a change in the algorithm within Twitter. It's still not as bad, I think, as other platforms, but there was a noticeable difference. So the underlying algorithm is increasingly controlled by artificial intelligence. That's how sophisticated it's becoming. TikTok, the power of TikTok, why it is the most popular app for young people is its algorithm. Its algorithm is able to get people addicted, and using the app in the high usage that it has, especially for younger generations. If that is going to be pro-Palestinian, that's a huge problem. And the head of the ADL, Jonathan Greenblatt, even in a recorded meeting that was leaked, said that we have a TikTok problem. We have a TikTok problem. We need to get rid of it. This is very important for the future of Israel. So this is exactly how AI is being used strategically by governments to control the population, to control us. And this is not a conspiracy. They're openly saying it. They're openly talking about it. You saw all of the reports that I showed you. This is quite a dangerous situation. So, what can we do? Honestly, I can't give you recommendations right now on this episode. We need to think about what can be done. One of the main things that comes to mind, though, is that we have to make sure that we build our communities in person. We're not just limited online. All our information is not just through social media. We find independent sources of information to follow news or to understand what's happening. This is very critical. If your whole news is coming from your Facebook feed or your Twitter feed, this is very dangerous. You're going to be much more susceptible towards the algorithm manipulation, towards the counter ummah, fake profiles, avatars that are being used to flood social media. These are big problems that you can avoid if you take more of your reading, more of your browsing, more of your activity away from these big platforms, even away from the internet as a whole. Touch grass, as they say. Touch grass. Build relationships with people. Build relationships with your Muslim community, with your neighbors. This is a critical part of not becoming a victim to these kinds of technologies. Okay, so let us look at some super chats, and we can react to what some of you guys are saying about all this. Inshallah. So we have Famo, Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum assalam. May Allah bless you for all your hard work, brother. Wa alaikum, appreciate it for your generosity. Noman Ali, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Wa alaikum assalam. Appreciate your generous donation. We have a super sticker from Parviz. Jazakallah khair, brother. Appreciate it. We have another sticker from Falcon. Barakallahu feek. Here's another comment from Famo. AI can now answer our phone for us and speak on our behalf. I guess answering a call is too taxing. now. Yes, a reference to the Modernity Genius of Islam episode. Yeah, so very shocking uses for tech for this AI, and a lot of it we can't even anticipate, because right now the technology, like, we think of use cases that are um, premised on the type of technology that we're used to, like social media, having your computer, your smartphone, apps. Like, that's our technological environment. So we can only think of how AI is going to be a part of that environment. Whereas in reality, AI is going to completely change the technological environment. There's going to be new things that we can't really anticipate because of this new technology. So, it's like asking Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, if he could have imagined, um, you know, let's say Facebook or Instagram. Like, could he have imagined that on the phone? It's on the phone. He couldn't even imagine that, because the technology of a smartphone hadn't been invented. He just came up with the invention of being able to communicate through electronic signals, transmitting voice through electricity. So this is why we can't really think linearly. When technological innovations happen, it's not a linear type of progress. There are jumps. Maybe you can even say quantum leaps that are hard to predict and have foreknowledge of. Then we also have Shu'un Islamiyya. Jazakallah khair, brother. We have our brother from Shu'un Islamiyya. If you are not subscribed, definitely if you're an Arabic speaker, you've heard of Shu'un Islamiyya. It's a great channel for all news from around the world, global news coming from in Arabic from Muslim brothers. So definitely subscribe to Shu'un Islamiyya, their channel, and they're also on all the social media platforms. Okay. So now let's go to Zionism. Let's go to the history of Christian Zionism. So we know about how Zionism, specifically with activist organizations such as AIPAC, which is the Israeli lobby, the ADL, other organizations, they use money and influence to transform even Western political parties, Western institutions, into tools for advancing the interests of Israel and maybe Jewish interests more broadly speaking. So this is something that is acknowledged. You can read John Mearsheimer's book, The Israeli Lobby, for example. And in the US and the UK, this is where it's the most obvious, but basically throughout the West, we see this. You have progressive liberal parties like the Democrats or the Labor parties. They're heavily pro-Israel, pro-Zionist. Then you have the conservative political parties, the Republicans or the Tories, and they're also heavily pro-Zionist. So these parties are supposed to be on different sides of the spectrum, but there's a consensus when it comes to Israel. So just as the Zionists have worked to transform the field of politics, they have also been working to transform the field of religion. And they have targeted Christianity for many years, many decades. They are also targeting Islam. They've been targeting atheism as well in order to create this kind of Zionist Christianity, Zionist Islam, and Zionist atheism. So today, for the rest of the show, we're going to talk about the history of Christian Zionism, and then in the following episode that we're going to have later in the week, inshallah, we're going to look at Islamic Zionism and how that's been developed. We're going to look at, like the Abrahamic family house and things of that nature, the Abraham Accords. But first, today, let's talk about Christianity. So there are two components of this story. There's the Catholic component, and there is the Protestant component. And the thing about Christianity is that Christianity has a history of being anti-Jewish. This is because of the Christian belief, the traditional Christian belief, that Jews rejected Jesus Christ as the Messiah, and that Jews were hostile to Jesus and plotted to kill him. That is the traditional Christian belief. And in addition to the belief that God has canceled the covenant that he had with the Jewish people and instead made a covenant with the Christian people. And I'll elaborate on that in a moment. But you have this idea now, instead of the West being a Christian civilization, the West is a Judeo-Christian civilization. This concept of Judeo-Christian has been a big change in the West's understanding of itself, and it is also due to Zionist influence. The West is a Jewish homeland, and you might think that this is a contradiction. It should be seen as a contradiction because the claim by Zionists is that Israel is the Jewish homeland. So how can the West also be a Judeo-Christian civilization? So this is, they accuse, you often see these Zionists accusing Muslims of, oh, well, Muslims, you Arabs, for example, you have Egypt, you have Saudi, you have Jordan, you have Syria, you have Algeria, you have Morocco, you have Iraq. Why can't we have this small sliver of land? Why? This is so selfish on the part of you Arabs. But, you can turn that around on this kind of racist argument that they make against Muslims and Arabs and say, okay, well, how come you get to have all of the West as a Judeo-Christian civilization, and then you also want to take a piece of the Middle East as well? You have the entirety of the West, and you have to ethnically cleanse this piece of land, push Palestinians out or kill them. This sounds very selfish, actually. So you can turn the argument around on them. The thing about Christianity, historically and traditionally, it's been very anti-Jewish. And this is represented by many verses in the New Testament that speak against Jews. So 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, we can look at that. We read, who both killed, this is referring to Jews, who both killed the Lord Jesus and their own prophets, and have persecuted us, and they please not God, and are contrary to all men. So this is anti-Jewish. You also have within the Gospel of John 14, chapter 14, verse 6, Jesus said to him, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So this is also anti-Jewish. It's anti-Muslim as well, anti-non-Christian, but it's pointed directly against Jews because they're actually rejecting Jesus. Muslims obviously don't reject Jesus. We don't believe that Jesus is the only path to the Father, but this is pointed to Jews. So the Gospels, the entirety of the New Testament, there are many passages like this that are anti-Jewish. So let's look at Catholicism. And there's no denying that the Catholic Church is one of the most powerful and persistent religious organizations in human history. But, all of that tradition of the Catholic Church, so much of the Catholic tradition has been canceled. Has been amended, reformed, in large part because of what's called the Second Vatican Council of the 1960s. So these are ecumenical councils. But at Vatican II, or the Second Vatican Council, the Church amended many fundamental Christian teachings in keeping with liberal notions of progress, science, human rights. And most importantly, the Church relinquished its traditional support for theocracy, its support for limitations on free speech, its support for blasphemy punishments, and its support for religious wars. So all of these things that we found in the Catholic tradition have been nullified basically by Vatican II. So theocracy, rule by the Church or under the influence of the Church. This is something that was undermined by Vatican II. Restrictions on free speech, obviously found in Islam, found in many religions, found in Catholicism for sure. You had the Index of Prohibited Books, for example, from the Catholic Church. Well, that's a limitation on freedom of speech and freedom of thought. Vatican II undermines that. Blasphemy punishments, such as the Inquisition, the auto da fe, these were canceled or undermined. The morality of them or the legitimacy of them were undermined by Vatican II and the Crusades. Religious war, conquest, religious conquest. This was also undermined by Vatican II. So this is the church becoming liberalized, the church reforming in accordance with religious freedom, secular governance, liberal norms. And obviously, since Vatican II of the 1960s, the Catholic popes have continued to liberalize. So there was an apology that was issued by the church for its persecution of Galileo due to his scientific arguments against the geocentric model. So this was in contradiction with the Catholic doctrine or traditional Christian doctrine of a geocentric model in favor of a heliocentric model. You also have Pope Francis, who he began his tenure as Pope in 2013, and he's been steadily affirming different kinds of human rights doctrines, specifically involving LGBT rights. He's also rejected the death penalty. So this is all new stuff. This is a continuous reformation or liberalization, rather, of the Catholic Church since the Vatican II. So a lot of changes in Vatican II pertain to Judaism. The Catholic Church historically has tried to combat Judaism and place limitations on Jews and Jewish figures, Jewish power. And this is why Zionists have been very intent on targeting the Catholic Church and to change the Catholic Church's position regarding Israel, regarding Judaism, etc. So the traditional Catholic doctrine, as we said, is very critical of Judaism, and this is reflected in, for example, the early church fathers like St. Gregory of Nyssa. And St. Gregory has some very anti-Jewish things to say, anti-Semitic things to say. He says Jews are slayers of the Lord, murderers of the prophets, enemies of God, haters of God, adversaries of grace, enemies of their father's faith, etc. This is in Homilies on the Resurrection. Gregory of Nyssa says this. And you have many statements like this from popes, so papal authority supporting anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic views. There is a long history of this. So Christian anti-Semitism in the church is much worse than you thought. Even Christians will acknowledge this. So you can read about this history. So this is part of the reforms. So at the time, leading up to the 1960s, you had organizations like the ADL, the American Jewish Committee, the World Jewish Congress. These were activist organizations that were pressuring the church, the Catholic Church. You also had activists like Jules Isaac. I'll bring you his picture so you can see. Here's Jules Marx Isaac. He died in 1963. You also have Abraham Joshua Heschel, who died in 1972. But these two activists, Jewish activists, were particularly effective in exerting pressure through media companies and through lobbying politicians to attack the Catholic Church and call it an immoral, anti-Semitic, hateful institution and demanding change. So in response to this intense lobbying, the Catholic Church in Vatican II renounced its traditional criticisms of Jews and Judaism, and it embraced this new idea that Jews don't actually need Jesus for salvation. Jews are saved because of the old covenant. There's no new covenant for Jews, and they should not be blamed for conspiring or plotting to kill Jesus. So this is the position that the church adopted in its reform in Vatican II. And this declaration from the church is known as Nostra Aetate. This was in 1965 that Nostra Aetate was proclaimed. So lobbying pressure on the church has continued. It didn't end there. And the church is constantly being attacked, and demands for the church to disavow its entire history, basically. Disavow the popes, disavow the church fathers, disavow all of this. So to address this constant pressure, since the 1970s, the Catholic Church has held interfaith dialogue. These initiatives, which are regular events, basically, and there are continuing committees and organizations and institutions that are devoted to bringing Catholics and Jews together to discuss how to improve mutual relations. So this is the attempt by the Catholic Church to heal the wounds, basically, and to self-reflect on its history of anti-Semitism, to reform itself. But there's a kind of hypocrisy, if we have to be honest about it. There's a kind of hypocrisy in forcing Catholics to change their traditional doctrines and ignore the other side of the equation. Because the reality is, there are many anti-Christian beliefs within Judaism. And if you've been following me on X, for example, I've pointed out passages within the Jewish religious texts that will claim, for example, that Jesus Christ is burning in hell in a vat of excrement. This is found in the Talmud. You also have the belief that Jesus was born because of adultery, that Mary, his mother, committed adultery with a Roman soldier, and that's how Jesus was conceived. This is also found in the Talmud. You also have Jewish supremacist beliefs that are based on the Hebrew Bible and are also found in the Torah. Many passages which describe non-Jews or Gentiles as being subhuman or being less than human or being akin to animals. And this is also found in Jewish law as well, traditional Jewish law, that says that Jews are obligated to slay idolaters and to destroy idolatry, specifically Christianity. This is Jewish law found in, for example, the Mishnah Torah. So you have all of these anti-Christian doctrines found in traditional Judaism, but Jews are not being forced to reform or to disavow these texts, to disavow Maimonides, their topmost theologian. They're not being required to expunge these doctrines and these beliefs from their texts. So it seems kind of hypocritical for them to demand the Catholic Church to do this song and dance, to atone for its anti-Semitic sins, when there is no reciprocity on the other side when it comes to these Jewish texts and these Jewish beliefs. And these are not like antiquated beliefs. If you look at many of the rabbis in Israel today, they are teaching these texts, they are teaching these doctrines without a whiff of embarrassment or self-consciousness. This is what they believe. They are very anti-Christianity and anti-Jesus Christ. So they're not apologetic about it at all when you go to the traditional Jewish institutions within Israel and some of the Orthodox institutions within the West as well. So what kind of interfaith dialogue is this? It's very one-sided. So that's the history with Catholicism. Now let's look at Protestantism, the other major branch of Christianity. And the Protestant history with anti-Semitism is similar to the Catholic history, like very anti-Semitic. Martin Luther, the father of the Protestant Reformation, is often accused of being the biggest anti-Semite in history. And he has this notorious work written in 1543 titled The Jews and Their Lies. So Martin Luther was really not pulling any punches. And you can read on Wikipedia, some of what he was saying in this book. So he says, "Set fire to their synagogues or schools. This is to be done in honor of our Lord and of Christendom, so that God might see that we are Christians. So that's very hardcore. And this is why I don't understand how any, I think it's just propaganda. I don't think any educated Jewish person would think that Muslims or Islam is harsher or more violent towards Judaism and Jews than Christianity. Like historically, Muslims considered Jews to be Ahlul Dhimma, protected people. There was no burning of synagogues. There was no burning of their religious schools. And that's why some of the biggest, the flourishing of Jewish theology and scholarship happened during Muslim rule, for example, in Andalusia, in Muslim Spain. So as soon as Catholics took over, that golden age ended for Jews. But you can see within Protestantism the same kind of attitude. Second, I advise that their houses also be razed and destroyed. So you're burning their synagogues, you are tearing down their houses. I advise that all their prayer books and Talmudic writings in which such idolatry, lies, cursing, and blasphemy are taught be taken from them. So erase their tradition, basically. Fourth, I advise that their rabbis are forbidden to teach henceforth on pain of loss of life. So you're executing rabbis. Fifth, I advise that safe conduct on the highways be abolished completely for the Jews, for they have no business in the countryside. Restrict their travel. Sixth, I advise that usury be prohibited to them and that all cash and treasure of silver and gold be taken from them. Seventh, I recommend putting a flail, an axe, a hoe, a spade, a distaff, or a spindle into the hands of young, strong Jews and Jewesses and let them earn their bread in the sweat of their brow. So basically consign them to manual labor. This is Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism. He's no friend of the Jewish people. So you can see how this is a serious concern, given how Protestants are, numbering in the hundreds of millions in the world, that there would be a interest in moderating their views or reforming their views on Judaism. And that is exactly what happened. So beginning in the 20th century, this reform started to take place. And to understand what this reform of Protestantism means, we have to understand the doctrines of suppressionism and dispensationalism. So, like Catholicism, traditional Protestantism endorses supersessionism or replacement theology. I referred to it earlier in the stream. And this is the doctrine that God has replaced the covenant that he had with Jews with a covenant with the Christian church. So the old covenant has been superseded. That's where supersessionism comes from. They were the chosen people of God, but now Christians are the chosen people of God, and the church is the new covenant that God has. So it's been superseded. The old covenant has been superseded. This covenant is important. Why? Because it comes with God's support and his blessings. It also comes with the biblical promise of the land of Israel. So the land of Israel is for the chosen people. The traditional doctrine is that the chosen people are Christians, so Christians are entitled to the promised land of Israel, greater Israel, that is described as an inheritance from God. So when traditional Christians would read the Old Testament, they viewed this as being a promise to them, not a promise to Jews. So this is part of supersessionism. Also, the Mosaic Law was superseded. Many Christians take that aspect of supersessionism, that, okay, the Mosaic Law is no longer applicable. And this is, in some of the debates, I point out this kind of double standard or inconsistency of Christians, where they will acknowledge part supersessionism, but not the whole part of it. So they'll still be in support of Zionism. Like, who's this guy? Googling philosophy or inspiring philosophy. Like, he's a hardcore Zionist, pro-Zionist. It's like going on stream and defending the IDF and defending the Talmud. So he's a hardcore Zionist. But he also believes that, well, the old law, the Mosaic Law, is no longer applicable. It's been superseded by a new covenant. So that this is an inconsistency from the part of some of the Zionist Christians. But the contrary doctrine is dispensationalism. So that's saying that God's covenant with the Jews has not been superseded. It's not been canceled out. It's still valid. It's still there. Jews are still God's chosen people. They enjoy God's support and blessings. And the land of Israel, that's promised to Jews, not Christians. And by the way, Jews can be saved without accepting Jesus Christ. Turns out they actually reject Jesus Christ and they consider him to be, all kinds of mean things that they say about him and his mother. So obviously Zionists are going to prefer dispensationalism because the important part is the promised land. Who does the promised land belong to? It belongs to the Jewish people. Supersessionism, meanwhile, is considered by Zionists to be anti-Semitic. This is hate. This is the epitome of hate. This doctrine of supersessionism, that God superseded his covenant with the Jews and he put that covenant with the church. This is anti-Semitism. So over the course of the 20th century, dispensationalism has been promoted. And this started with this Scofield Reference Bible. So some of you may have heard of the Scofield Bible. I think Eddie of the Dean Show had at least one or maybe even multiple videos discussing the Scofield Bible. Check out Eddie of the Dean Show and his channel for more information on that. But it's basically the Scofield Bible is a reference Bible that has edits and annotations by the American Bible scholar Cyrus Scofield. And he is the one who popularized dispensationalism at the beginning of the 20th century. His book was published by Oxford University Press, and it contains the entire text of the traditional Protestant King James Version of the Bible. And it first was published in 1909. The Scofield Bible had several innovative features. So most important, it was printed and it was basically a commentary on the biblical text alongside the Bible instead of a separate volume. So this was the first kind of commentary included within the text on the Bible since the Geneva Bible of 1560. So this is very significant in the English language. The commentary interpreted biblical verses from the dispensationalist perspective. So in Arabic, you call this a sharh. This is the sharh. The commentary is pushing this doctrine of dispensationalism, which is favoring Zionism. So let me share this passage. Oh, here's a picture of Scofield, if you didn't know. And here is the verse that is often cited. In Genesis, I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and people on earth will be blessed through you. So Scofield comments on this, and he gives this kind of dispensationalist reading. So he says, I will bless them that bless thee. Hopefully you can read that. He says, in fulfillment closely related to the next clause, and curse him that curseth thee. Wonderfully fulfilled in the history of the dispersion, it has invariably fared ill with the people who have persecuted the Jew, well with those who have protected him. The future will still more remarkably prove this principle. So he's basically interpreting this to mean that, whoever is going to bless Jews, support Jews, provide for them, defend them, fight for them, then you're going to be blessed. This is a completely new interpretation that broke with literally centuries of almost 2 millennia of church tradition in both the Protestant and the Catholic Church. So this is the Scofield Bible. It continues to be popular, and it's printed in updated form to this day. The New Scofield Study Bible from 1984. And it's even getting more, the newer versions are even more Zionist. So that's, the trend of history, basically, or the trend of reform. So it's not just Scofield, by the way. It's not like Scofield just, had his commentary on the King James Version of the Bible, and then, it was selling hot off the presses. Everyone was going, oh, let's go get the newest copy of this biblical commentary. It's so amazing. It didn't happen organically like that. You had a Wall Street lawyer who was also a Zionist Jew, Samuel Untermyer. And he was one of the most wealthy and powerful attorneys in the United States. And Untermyer heavily supported Scofield. Basically, this was the patron of Scofield, and Untermyer pushed for his commentary Bible to be published and propagated by leading publishing houses. So this is documented in an academic work of history from Joseph Canfield, The Incredible Scofield and His Book. And it documents how people like Untermyer, other Zionist Jews, opened the doors basically for Scofield. So that's really why it became published in Oxford University Press and other places. It's not because it had this kind of inherent value academically or in Christian theology or Christian tradition. It was artificially boosted. So, but this is not the end of Zionism for Protestant Christianity. There are other very influential moves that were made by Zionists to prop up Protestant preachers and authorities. And two of the people I'll focus on are Billy Graham and John Hagee, who pioneered the mass dissemination of Christianity through television. And this is what's known as televangelism. So Zionists really emphasized and put a heavy value on media, radio, and television companies. And this allowed them to elevate certain Christian voices. So Billy Graham is a very good example. Billy Graham is arguably the most influential Christian preacher in the 20th century. So here is Billy Graham. You can look, he has this kind of, when he was younger, this movie star face, movie star look, and he has a face for TV. And he was promoted on these programs. So he rose to prominence in the 1940s and 1950s. And unlike other Christians of his era, he avoided criticizing Jews and Judaism. He avoided racism and anti-Semitism towards Jews. He also avoided racism towards black people as well. This was unique for Christian preachers in this early 20th century era. Billy Graham, this made him a very, like a rising prominent star, especially in the eyes of Zionist power brokers. So Graham's version of Christianity that he was preaching was appreciated by these Zionists, and they wanted to use him to combat anti-Semitism and also promote Israel. And he received a lot of support from a gentleman named Leonard Goldenson. Here is Leonard. And what's significant about Mr. Leonard here is that he was the founder and president of the television and radio network known as the American Broadcasting Company, ABC. This is one of the biggest media companies in the United States. He founded it and was the president of it. And then you also had David Sarnoff. David Sarnoff, he was head of the National Broadcasting Company, NBC. So these are two major media companies that are broadcasting television to millions of households. And this is the age of TV, where TV is just coming onto the scene. There weren't all these entertainment options for people like you have now with the internet, with social media, with apps. You can, consume all types of diversity of media. There's not as much centralization, though big tech companies are trying to change that. Governments are trying to change that. But back in the day, even when I was a kid, you turn on the TV, there's only 3 channels. There's only 2 or 3 or 4 channels, especially before cable TV. When I was growing up, we didn't have cable TV. We just had the 3 channels. So if you go to the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, there's just 3 channels on TV, and you have ABC, you have NBC, you have maybe another 1 or 2 companies. So if those companies are promoting these Christian preachers who are also Zionists, people like Billy Graham, then that can have a big impact. And this is why we see so many in the boomer generation that are diehard pro-Israel, pro-Zionist. They have been raised on this kind of messaging and have been taught that if you are going to be a true Christian, a good Christian, then you must be a friend of Israel. You must support Israel. So Goldenson helped Graham establish the first televangelist show known as the Hour of Decision. This show ran for several years on ABC, and then thereafter was on radio with the aid of Sarnoff on NBC. So this is Hour of Decision turns 60. This is from Billy Graham's website. And then you also have Billy Graham, who made an influential documentary called His Land, promoting Zionism to Christians. So now you see Billy Graham. This is when he was older. He died in 2018, so he died 6 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. But he was making documentaries, and this was a very influential one about Israel. And it's streaming now. You can watch it. It was released 50 years ago, but it's being streamed. So what's interesting is that Billy Graham, in his private life, seemed to be anti-Israel, or he seemed to be hostile to Judaism, but he kept it to himself. And then there was a secret taped conversation that was leaked, that he had a private conversation with President Nixon in 1972. And he admits that he is friends with many prominent Jews who support him because he promotes Israel, but he keeps his true views about Israel secret. So the quote that was leaked, this was reported in the New York Times, lingering anger over 1972 remarks on Jews. So the remarks in question are, he said, quote, "A lot of the Jews are great friends of mine. They swarm around me and are friendly to me because they know that I'm friendly with Israel. But they don't know how I really feel about what they're doing to this country, and I have no power, no way to handle them, but I would stand up if under proper circumstances." So he's saying this to President Nixon. Nixon, as you know, was impeached, and he resigned because of Watergate, the Watergate scandal. Maybe we'll cover that in another episode of the Haqiqat show. But yeah, this is basically, he got in trouble when this was leaked and it was reported on the New York Times. So this is Billy Graham, very interesting pro-Zionist Christian, very influential. The other person is John Hagee. John Hagee is still alive. He was born in 1940. He's the head of John Hagee Ministries. He has telecasts in the United States and Canada, very influential. In 2006, Hagee and some 400 leaders from across Christian and Jewish communities formed Christians United for Israel, which is called CUFI, Christians United for Israel, and it's a leading Christian Zionist organization. They lobby Congress, they promote Christian Zionism throughout the West. And they also are very pro-settler expansion in the West Bank. They oppose the UN. They oppose any kind of UN Security Council resolution that condemns the expansion of settlements, contrary to international law in the West Bank. So they're really in the weeds. And he preaches, Hagee preaches, you have to support Israel. This is the most important issue. And you can go to his website and look at the front page. Iran attacks Israel. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They've turned the whole religion into Zionism. That's his whole ministry is. And you can see he's the old guy here. Right there, John Hagee. So he's constantly being honored by Israel as being, the strongest defender, Christian defender, American Christian defender of Israel, getting awarded. He also gets big money, major grants, wealthy donors behind Christians United for Israel. So Adelson family, Sheldon Adelson is Jewish Zionist. He died recently. He was also the biggest supporter of Donald Trump. Gave over $1 million to Donald Trump. gave over $1 million to John Hagee. You also have other Zionist foundations like Shilman Foundation, Milstein Foundation, Marcus Foundation, Adelson, as I mentioned. They're giving millions of dollars to Christians to promote Zionism to unsuspecting Christians. So this is Christian Zionism. This is how you have at least 1, 2, 3 generations of Christians think that defending Israel is what it means to be a Christian. And the Bible commands it, and the Catholic Church commands it, and papal authority commands it. You have to be friends of Israel. Forget what it actually says in the New Testament. Forget what, Jesus says about Jews in the New Testament and the Pharisees in the New Testament. Forget in the Gospels. Forget about what the church fathers have said. Forget about Martin Luther, literally the father of Protestantism, has said. There's no acknowledgement of that or recognition of that. Let alone like, okay, maybe you recognize it and then you denounce it. But most of these American Christians have no clue about this history. And it's all an invention. It's all a Zionist invention that through money, power, influence has been hoisted over their eyes. And they don't know better. So it doesn't happen by accident. It's not an organic evolution. It's a carefully crafted plan taken over decades. So you have to admire this kind of strategic vision that they utilized and they followed through with. So next episode of the show, we're going to look at Islamic Zionism, quote unquote. How is a similar or analogous game plan being used to target Muslims theologically? How is Islamic theology being reformed and transformed to become Zionist? Can you believe it? Well, it's happening. And we're going to show you a lot of the evidence of that in the next episode, inshallah. And then also atheism. Atheism is also targeted to be pro-Zionist. So you see many of the biggest Islamophobe, anti-Muslim, anti-Palestinian voices are the new atheists. Are these new atheists who say, we think all religions are toxic and bad, especially Islam, but, Judaism is okay, but especially Islam. So they seem to have a soft spot for one particular religion and just this biting hatred of Islam. Is that a coincidence? Is that, organic? Or is it also something that has been influenced through a series of historical factors, special interests, and so on? So that's going to be our special segment in the next episode, bi'idhnillah. Okay, so we've had a good episode here, an hour and a half we've discussed. So let's talk about some Twitter beef. Obviously, Twitter, the main topic of conversation these days is Zionism, is Palestine, the war, but we also have back and forth with some Hindus, and that stuff is kind of interesting. So I'll show you some of the Twitter beef, the Twitter fights that have been going on that are noteworthy for this episode. But before I do that, just want to remind you to subscribe to our newsletter. Just go to the link in the description and subscribe to our newsletter, subscribe to the channel. And that way we can stay in touch with you. Make sure you like the video, make sure you comment. We want to have quality episodes for you at least 2 or 3 times a week. These episodes require a lot of research, putting together a lot of material, and we hope that they are informative, entertaining to some extent. So subscribe so that you don't miss any of our episodes, inshallah. Okay, so let's see. What do we find on Twitter? So there's an interesting tweet that I thought was very revealing. You have this tweet from a Hindu extremist, and he shares this. Oh, this is a statue of Allah. Archaeologists discovered one of the 360 idols of the Kaaba, possibly a statue of Allah. Astaghfirullah, and look, and it's clearly photoshopped. It's like a very poor job at photoshopping. But this tweet, was in response to a tweet of mine. This is a Hindu ritual where they're imitating blood and pouring blood on some kind of demonic being. And we published an article on MuslimSkeptic about the concept of demon worship in Hinduism. And we already talked on episode 1 about the different concepts of God and the different psychology that comes with worshiping a monotheistic God versus a pantheon of gods or a polytheism. So go to episode 1 for that discussion. But this is the video I shared of a Hindu ritual pouring blood basically on this multi-headed demonic statue. And then you had all these, Hindus respond, these Hindu extremists, and they want to portray Allah in these ways, astaghfirullah, but they have to make up stuff. So the point that I made is that the only way that Hindus, these Hindu leaders, Hindutva extremists, can convince the masses, the Hindu masses, not to convert to Islam is by circulating false claims, bad Photoshop. And it's kind of a self-defeating argument because they want to say, oh, well, you think our gods look demonic. Well, your God is demonic too, because look at this statue. So that's the only way that you can convince these Hindus not to convert to Islam en masse, by tricking them and making them think, oh, but they have demonic gods too in Islam. Look at this statue. This is a statue of Allah that Muslims worship. So it's very pathetic. You had another tweet. This was another response from a Hindu extremist. Worship of female evil and demon in Islam. Case of perverts. So you have this poor shop owner, and he's praying. He sells women's clothes, and you have like some underwear that he's selling here. But this is the direction of Qibla. He's not praying to anything in the store. But these Hindu extremists are so desperate to portray Islam as being just like Hinduism. So then I said, when Hindu extremists want to insult Islam, they claim that Islam resembles Hinduism. So that's very telling. You want to insult Islam and attack Islam by saying it's just like Hinduism? Doesn't that undermine Hinduism? Isn't that insulting Hinduism? For instance, since Hindus worship stone penises like the lingam or the yoni, they have to pretend that Muslims have some similar practice. In this case, they have found a video of one Muslim praying in a store that sells with female clothing. This is then presented as proof that Muslims pray to bras or breasts and hence secretly resemble Hindus. The fact that Hindus consider resemblance to Hinduism as an insult indicates their deep embarrassment at their own religious teachings. So, I mean, this is just some Hindus. Obviously, not all Hindus attack Islam like this. So we're just talking about extremists, Hindus online who are constantly spreading Islamophobia. We have to criticize what they're attacking us with by responding. And this is what we see. So they reveal themselves basically. All right. So now let's take a look at your super chats. Let's see. Let me see. Okay. So here we have a donation from Andros. Jazakallah khair, brother. Here's another. Why do Christians blame Jews for killing Jesus? Wasn't Christ's whole aim to come and die for your sins? Shouldn't they be praising them? I don't think that that's how it works. I think they consider it still to be evil. They don't, to be attacking and torturing and killing. I don't think that it doesn't work that way. So yes, what's an analogy? Yeah, you'll have to ask a Christian, especially one of these Zionist Christians. They have YouTube channels, ask them, and they'll probably say, well, we don't blame Jews for killing Jesus. Ask them about Gregory of Nyssa, ask them about Martin Luther, ask them about First Thessalonians and the other passages within the New Testament. This is a theological question for them. I can't think of an explanation off the top of my head, but just because, or maybe they would say, like, just because something is meant to happen, that's not a praise of the secondary means of it happening. So yes, it was destined to happen, in their theology, that Jesus would die for your sins, but that doesn't mean that the way that it happened is also endorsed as a good thing in the religion. Sayyid Hamza, Jazakallah khair. Brother Daniel, I salute you for being on Haqq. Jazakallah khair. Inshallah, we all remain on Haqq. Okay, great. So, any other super chats? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Jazakallah khair, brother, for your super chat. Really appreciate it. By the way, what do you guys think of the stream quality? I tried to increase and improve the quality of the stream. Because last time I think the quality was a little bit degraded on the stream, but I tried to improve the quality. The camera, alhamdulillah, is a good camera, and it's recording or streaming in 1080p HD quality, full HD quality, but full support SAR from Muslim Science. Assalamu alaikum, bro. Stream quality is pretty good, so that's good to hear. Turn off the lamp. This is a beautiful lamp right here, lantern. Don't you find it very attractive? Burning with the fire here. The red is distracting. Wow, another person who doesn't like the lantern. Oh, I like your PFP. Modernist menace to Islam. That's nice. I like the lamp. I think it's quite decorative. So yeah, schedule for the show is not determined. It's not like it's every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but my goal is 3 times a week at least. That's the goal right now. I will have to take a break in the coming week, inshallah, because I'm traveling. But when I get back, inshallah, then 3 times a week. I'll try, maybe at some point it'll settle into a set schedule, but for now I'm just playing it by ear based on news stories that come out. Background is nice, thank you. I love the lantern, thank you. I love the lamp. We have a pro lamp contingent here, so. Inshallah, yeah, things will improve technically. Christians will never acknowledge they are useful idiots on the political stage, and the spiritual war. Christianity is a death cult. Thank you for your super chat. Thorn in your side. I think a lot of Christians, they're kind of waking up to the fact that they've been used as pawns in certain aspects in politics. I grew up Christian in Iraq, but Muslims loved me and took me in as their son. That's very nice to hear. It's good to hear that. Glad that they were taking care of you. Waalaikumsalam. Good and timely initiative. My question, your views on the shape of the earth. And when are you really releasing Genius of Islam episode 4? Episode 4, inshallah, we're working on it, so I don't know if it'll be 2, 3, 4 months, but it's very time intensive and resource intensive. So you'll have to wait a little bit, but it'll be worth the wait, inshallah. We're definitely moving on it. When it comes to the Earth, I believe that the Earth is a globe in shape. I'm not a flat earther. But, you know, what is really the shape of anything? You can ask a philosophical question like that, because within theoretical physics, you have physicists who are speculating that the Earth might be, or the universe might be 10-dimensional, 11-dimensional, 21-dimensional. So if you study superstring theory or quantum loop gravity or M theory, what have you, these theoretical models posit multi-spatial dimensions, more than just 3 spatial dimensions. So if the world is, or the universe is 20-dimensional, then the Earth, if it's a globe or a 3D sphere, in context of 11 dimensions, that would be a pure flat. So you can be a flat earther and believe in a spherical Earth at the same time. Imagine that. So that's good to hear. Oh, the Earth is the shape of a shivling? I hope not. Thank you for exposing Hinduism in debate. A lot of Hindus left the religion after that debate. Alhamdulillah, I hope that's the case. The globe is a lie. Thoughts on recent debate, Pierce Morgan with Norman and a Zionist settler? I didn't see that. Question for the chat. Does Daniel believe the earth is round? Well, I just gave my answer, but so how is the chat going to have more information than what I just said? Okay, guys. So again, Jazakumullah khairan for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed the content and these two subjects. We're going to continue talking about Zionism, and we're going to have a new story to cover in the next episode. We'll see what happens between now and then. But subscribe, catch the next episode, watch episode 1 if you haven't already, and leave a comment if you have any suggestions on anything. We'd love to hear from you in the comment section. We definitely read them, and I'm excited to continue the Haqiqat show and join you multiple times a week, bi'idhnillah. And with that, we will get to the outro, which I hope you like. We designed it. Let's get you on the next one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.